good. Did anyone do anything interesting on Sunday? I wasn't seeing you. Good morning. Something is always a trouble. Come on. Why can't I do it? I had to take it out of my back. Yeah, no, literally. Yeah, that was shocking, Jen. We watched part of that game, and my husband was like, he's so bad. Like, what is happening? Why can't I open... That was really quick. Yeah, he was real bad, Jen. I'm so sorry. Yeah, doing state audit prep today. Oh, no brain required. We love no brain required. 3 and then got injured. Wait, Liz, who's yours? That's so brutal. Mine plays tonight, so who knows what'll happen, because he's supposed to put up good points, but like, who really knows, right? He's playing tonight, though. We'll see what goes down. We will see what goes down. Yesterday's games were interesting. Jaden Daniels, Jets. Oh, how bad is the injury? Is it like season ending or just like for that? His record was like 63-3 since I saw. I know, Jen. It's crazy. It makes no sense. Makes no sense. Yikes. Big yikes, you guys. Big yikes. One thing goes wrong and it just upsets the whole thing, right? That's the craziness of it all. Because we have so many people, the waiver wire is not really a thing. Which is my bad, obviously. But we're just going to have to roll with it for this year and have the fun while we can. And you know. Oh, Justin Fields. Justin Fields was injured? I didn't know that. Oh, he's usually really good. It's kind of cool. It's after football. I know. I had to learn. I'm married to a football family, and you know me. I'm nothing if not a student of whatever's around me. Is she holding your shirt under the ring? Yes. Yes, she is. That's correct. Oh yeah, she's just holding on like that. This other hand is inside my shirt. Concussion. No. Yeah, right, Jen? It helps. It helps you get into it. That's why we did it last year originally. Because, like, being in the fantasy, like, helps you get involved. You know, it gives you, like, a reason to want to watch and find out what's going on. So tell your partner I said you're welcome. Good morning, Mary. Good morning, Anya. Yeah. Anya got real into it last year. I have like 20 minutes left in Saturday's book, but I'll go back after. Yeah, the last 20 minutes of Saturday, they were pretty big. I'm not gonna lie to you, they were pretty big. Yeah. A lot of stuff going down there. Yeah. Oh yeah, I was foul-mouthed. You were foul-mouthed, my dear. You really were. There was a husband in birth class watching his game during class. That's funny. Do you know what game it was? Did you tell him you hear about games? That's funny. Fairy godmother just showed up to the meeting. Oh yeah, it's about to get big. You're about to hear some stuff. She's gonna tell stories. Yeah, wow. Let's see what we get through today before this little lady wakes up. Hopefully a good chunk, you know? And also, I didn't sleep through book club. As you can see, I'm here in the flesh, awake. At least I think I am. Good morning, Susan. I'm trying to learn knitting. Oh, knitting is awesome. I know how to knit, actually. I do. I do know how to knit. Yeah, it was a weird dream. It was a weird dream. Game 1 this year, I was getting all into it a little bit. You should get into it, Anya. I love when you're into it. I'm also into it. But yes, this is the hand that Sloth was referring to. Emotional support hand. All right, let's go to the reading chair and do some reading. Who are you against this week, Anya? Okay. I just want you guys to know, I've already started making the slimes for the next restock, and I think you're going to be both shocked and happy by what's in it. At least I hope, anyway. Okay. I can do this because she's facing that way, so it's just the back of her head. I haven't learned to crochet, but I do. Do we get a theme hint? No. I used to know how, but relearning is oh, that's fair. I can teach you crochet. You should teach me crochet if I ever had time. I've been loving the one we just got. Wait, can we talk about the tall jars for avalanches? So like, avalanches have been revolutionized by these tall jars because the issue that we always had was over mixing and shipping, but the length of the jar prevented that. I looked at the jars and I was like, I wonder if this would work. Totally worked. Totally worked. Can we talk about lavender haze? The lavender haze scent is chef's kiss. I agree. But those tall jars, y'all, the tall jars really made a difference for those avalanches. Yeah. Yes. Anyone else think it smells like a Cabbage Patch doll? She asked me this the other day, but I never had a Cabbage Patch doll, so I couldn't answer. I refused to mix mine. Yeah, you don't even have to mix it. I mean, obviously, eventually it'll mix on its own, but like I was telling Anya, what I used to do with my avalanches is just let them go day by day and take pictures of them and make them phone backgrounds because they were so cool. It doesn't really smell like that to me, Amanda, because I actually hate smoke smells. Yeah, it smells like the plant, not like actual. It smells, yeah. It was called that, but it's not a cigarette smell at all. Yeah. Amanda, I think I might have one more in the grab bag bin if you want to message me, because you'd be owed one anyway. So you just let me know if you'd like that to be one of your things, and you can try it, but it doesn't smell. No, it's very fresh. Don't you guys think it's kind of fresh? It smells like you're out in the woods almost, right? Well, no, Liz thinks it smells like a Cabbage Patch doll. I think it smells like you're like out somewhere nice. I don't know. Because if it smelled like actual tobacco, I wouldn't have been able to handle it because I have very negative reactions to that. Did the slime you make new or someone else do it already? I'm so sorry, I don't really know what you're talking about. If it's anything in the restock, then I give. Yeah, it's really good, and I hate cigarette smell. Me too. Yeah, it's clean and earthy. That's what I thought as well. Clean and earthy. Yeah. The reason I used it for lavender haze is because like the concept of the, like when you hear lavender haze, you know, you want like a little bit of like a over, you know, I don't know. Anyway, it fit for me. It felt like it worked. But I might DM over the next grabby, no big deal if it gets slammed. Yeah, I mean, there's like 4 or 5 in the grabby bin. So yeah, it is a little sweet. Hey, Brittany, it is a little sweet. What was the scent that was the blue? The blue? Which blue, though? I don't know which one. Are you talking about Stitch Butter or a different one? Stitch Butter was Devil Snack Pack. You have to send me a picture because I don't know. But if you send a picture in the chat, I bet we can figure it out. If you're talking about the red, white, and blue one, that was unscented. Yeah, the red, white, and blue one is unscented. The Miss Americana, there was no scent in that one. The white half of it was scented like marshmallow, though, if that's what you might be smelling. But the red, white, and blue was unscented. Guys, I have to remember to make activator tonight so that I can have a desk lamp. Yes. Put it in your reminders. Do it right now, girl. Do it right now. Okay. Well, we are on chapter 13, which is Jar of Souls. Jar of Souls. I don't really like telling people what to do, Brittany, but you kind of asked for it, right? You wanted me to tell you to do that, I think. I feel like you wanted that from me. It felt needed. Okay. Sure did. Sure did. Okay. I am going to show you the picture. The marshmallow is perfect, I agree. Of this chapter. Look at this. What a drawing. I mean, that's really, what's the word? Poignant, right? They're just in there. I'm so glad, Roxy. I'm glad you like the ones that we chose. Yeah. Interesting, right? Jar of Souls. Here we go. Deep in the heart of the dwarf forest, where the trees and the shrubbery grew the thickest, was a small hut. Oh, wait. I forgot to participate in TikTok the way that they want me to so that they don't nerk my account. Because we've been doing really well with no issues. I hate that I even have to do this, but it makes sure that I don't just like lose followers like crazy. Thick and Glossy and Stitch Comedy. I think I still have one left, or maybe 2 or 3 left of the Thick and Glossy, Nikki, if you want it to be your grab bag. For your next one, you can DM me, because I think I have a few left of that can be made into grab bags. I think. I can't promise because I'm not in the room right now, but off the top of my head, thank you, Brittany, I appreciate it. I think. Okay. There was a small hut unseen by all who passed. A witch named Hagatha lived in the hut many years ago and strategically planted a wall of thorn bushes around her home, making it virtually impossible to find. Sounds good. And although the witch was long dead and the hut had more residents now than ever before, the enchantress turned the hut into her new home following the restoration of her powers. It still looked the same on the outside, with only 2 windows and a hay roof, but it had been charmed to become a spacious manor the moment that someone walked through the door. It had large rooms with high ceilings and black stone walls. It had a fireplace that was made of amethyst stones, within which a fire of purple flames burned a collection of skulls like firewood. The furniture was made of exotic porcupine and salamander animal skins. A chandelier made of various species' teeth hung from the ceiling but gave no light. It was usually a quiet place, but tonight the piercing cries of a child echoed through its halls. "Please be quiet, little princess," Rumpelstiltskin said to Princess Hope. Princess Hope was more than half his size, but he still rocked the 1-year-old back and forth, trying to soothe her. "Mama," the princess cried. "Mama?" "You can't have your mama, I'm afraid," Rumpelstiltskin told the child, and she bawled even harder than before. "She's been crying for more than a day," Charlotte Bailey said from the back of the room. "Will you please just give her to me?" The twins' mother was imprisoned in a large bird cage that swung a few feet above the ground. "What makes you think that you can get her to stop crying?" Rumpelstiltskin said, but he was exhausted from having to care for the child for the last day. "Because I'm a nurse. It's what I do," she said. Charlotte was still dressed in her nursing scrubs. She had just finished a shift at the children's hospital when a mysterious blanket of light wrapped around her and transported her into the fairy tale world. It didn't take long for Charlotte to realize that the enchantress who had summoned her there was after her daughter, not her. So for Alex's protection, Charlotte had pretended to be her daughter. It didn't appear that Princess Hope would calm down anytime soon, so against his better judgment, Rumpelstiltskin handed the princess to Charlotte through the bars of the cage. He didn't care how angry Esmea would be to find the child with another prisoner. He just wanted the crying to stop. Rumpelstiltskin had never been good with kids.
There, baby girl, Charlotte said, and she stroked Hope's auburn curls. It's going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. And slowly but surely, Princess Hope calmed down in Charlotte's maternal embrace, sleeping for the first time since she had been taken. All the young princess needed was a mother's touch. Rumpelstiltskin was so relieved to have silence that he could have slept for 3 days if he were allowed to. Charlotte studied the little man. Nothing about him was malicious like his master. He seemed like such a gentle and kind man. So, you're Rumpelstiltskin then? She asked him. Yes, he said with a remorseful shrug, ashamed of the reputation that came with his name. Did you really spin hay into gold for that maiden, like the story says you did? Charlotte asked. That I did, Rumpelstiltskin admitted. And did you really try to take her firstborn child away from her? Charlotte asked, finding this hard to believe. Rumpelstiltskin then let out a heavy sigh. Oh, that's what Esmea wanted me to do, he said, but I couldn't go through with it. I told the maiden, well, she was a queen by that point, that I would dismiss her end of the bargain if she could guess my name. And if she did, if I recall correctly, Charlotte said. It had been a while since she'd heard the story. I made sure she did, Rumpelstiltskin confessed. I caught one of the soldiers following me, so I danced around a fire proclaiming my name for the whole forest as loudly as I could. So you intentionally made it easy for her, she said. That was very kind of you. A tiny smile grew on Rumpelstiltskin's face, but it quickly faded. Yeah, I thought so too, he said. Unfortunately, no one will ever know that part of the story. People are quick to judge, Charlotte said, and I'm no exception. I never wondered why you did all of those things. My mind just made up that you were, well, villain? Rumpelstiltskin asked, unfazed. It was what he had been known as the majority of his life. Well, yes, a villain, Charlotte admitted. Rumpelstiltskin was growing very comfortable talking to Charlotte, too comfortable, perhaps. Had he not been so tired, he might have kept his guard up, but he couldn't deny that there was something trustworthy about Charlotte. They both were good people stuck in bad situations. Hey, how did someone like you get mixed up with someone like her? Charlotte asked, shaking her head. Because I had the misfortune of being a dreamer, he said sadly. A dwarf is born with one option, become a miner. A life spent in the dark tunnels under the ground was never what I wanted for myself. I always wanted to be outside. I loved being with the plants and animals. I used to daydream about being a shepherd or maybe a farmer. My brothers used to scold me day and night for it. They said being a miner was an honor and that I was lucky. And then one day Esmea came with an offer to be her apprentice. Rumpelstiltskin rubbed his eyes and took a seat on the porcupine-skin chair, too fatigued to mind the needles pointing him. It's funny, he said. I didn't think twice about saying yes, but I've regretted it every day of my life since. Charlotte couldn't help but feel sorry for him. She realized that there were 3 prisoners under this roof. Anyone would have said yes if they were in your shoes, she said. Back then, perhaps, Rumpelstiltskin agreed, but now no one would ever admit to that. A strong breeze blew through the room. Why is the child with her? Said a booming voice that made Charlotte and Rumpelstiltskin jump. Esmea had suddenly appeared. The enchantress seemed tired. Her posture wasn't quite as straight and her hair didn't flow as freely as it had before. Esmea had been planning this night for a long time, and it hadn't ended the way that she wanted. Rumpelstiltskin immediately hopped out of his chair. Princess Hope wouldn't stop crying, he said, and I wanted to have a silent home for you to return to. Esmea scowled at Charlotte, and she held on to the princess even tighter. The enchantress moved toward the cage and peered in at them through the bars like a preying hawk. You're awfully good with children, aren't you? Esmea said suspiciously. I told you, I'm a nurse. It's my job, Charlotte said, shifting uncomfortably under the enchantress's gaze. I take care of sick children at a hospital. Esmea raised an eyebrow. Interesting, she said. I never expected the fairy godmother's grandmother would be so old. Well, not all of us have magic holding us up, Charlotte retorted. You've got spirit, I'll give you that, Esmea said, but perhaps this will humble you. And Esmea placed the glass jar that she had been carrying on a small table close to Charlotte's cage. Charlotte was horrified to see a miniature ghostly version of the fairy godmother was trapped inside. That's my grandmother, Charlotte said, almost forgetting that she was still pretending to be her own daughter. What have you done to her? A smile appeared on Esmia's face, matching the satisfaction in her eyes. I captured her soul, she said. And although the thought made Charlotte sick, she had no idea such a thing was even possible, even in the fairy tale world. What do you want with her soul? Charlotte asked. Oh, it's a bit of a hobby of mine, actually, Esmia said and walked to the fireplace. Displayed proudly on the mantel were 5 other turquoise jars, each containing a ghostly substance. You're a soul collector? Charlotte asked. Is it to make up for being soulless yourself? Oh, clever play on words, Esmia said mockingly. You know what the phrase forgive and forget is? Well, I always disagreed with it. I found it impossible, actually. People would do me wrong and then they'd forget about me, as if their actions didn't matter because I didn't matter. How was I supposed to forgive people like that? So you imprisoned their souls instead of forgiving them? Charlotte said. Oh, precisely, Esmia said. I found that taking away their life force was much more appealing than simply forgiving them. To forgive would be to allow them to continue living their lives free of consequence, but by taking their souls and preventing them from all future happiness, I could find healing and peace. Charlotte couldn't believe what she was hearing. Do you honestly expect anyone to sympathize with you with that? Charlotte asked. Esmia stared into the fire at the burning skulls, almost in a trance. I don't want the world to understand. I want it to grovel, she said. The confession made Charlotte's heart heavy. She wondered if she would ever be able to escape the clutches of a person who thought this way. But thinking about her children, Bob, and the life she had been stolen from gave Charlotte the strength to survive the enchantress's imprisonment. I find it hard to believe that the fairy godmother who's known for her generosity would harm you in any way, Charlotte said. Sometimes help can be just as destructive as harm, Esmia said. But I imagine someone who helps for a profession could not comprehend that. Enlighten me, then, Charlotte challenged her. And the enchantress raised her eyebrows. The fairy godmother found me in the other world when I was just a girl, Esmia said. I was alone, I was orphaned, and I was starving. She brought me here to live with the fairies in the fairy kingdom. They gave me a home, they taught me to use magic in a productive manner, and in time they trained me to be one of the greatest fairies in the kingdom. Charlotte shook her head as though she had misunderstood. That doesn't sound like something worth begrudging, she said. Oh, success can scar you as much as failure, Esmia continued. The more I surpassed the other fairies with my talents, the more they resented me. Fairies are incredibly jealous creatures, and although no one ever talks about it because, well, that would tamper with their image, wouldn't it? When the fairy godmother declared me her protege, all the other fairies distanced themselves from me. I never asked for the attention, but they targeted their frustrations on me as if I had done something to personally offend them. Every spell I cast, every enchantment I performed was subject to unjustified amounts of criticism. Even though I was accomplishing incredible things, left and right, my achievements were ignored because of the special treatment I received. I became ashamed of my gifts, and mediocrity became my new goal, wanting to be in the same league as the others. I lowered my standards, but that only aggravated them more, and by the time I reached adolescence, I was alone and starving again. But this time, for affection. The enchantress gestured to the jars displayed on her mantel. Which brings us to these, she said. Now, in this section of the story, well, we're very close to my heart, you see, because inside the jars on the mantel are souls of the 5 men who unwisely broke it. 1 man who never loved me, 1 who couldn't love me, 1 who loved me too much, and 1 man who loved me in secret, 1 who didn't love me enough. Esmia picked up the jar farthest to the left and looked inside it. The figure of a young man wearing an apron appeared in the ghostly substance inside. The baker was my first love, the enchantress said. He lived in a small village in the charming kingdom and worked in his family's bakery. He was the first person besides the fairy godmother to even ask me if I was having a good day. I was so young and vulnerable. All it took was a shared smile to make me fall madly in love with him. We became very close, and I confessed my deepest secrets and desires to him. I was positive that our love would last forever. Unfortunately for me, I learned his intentions were anything but genuine. I'd been the subject of a practical joke. The baker had pretended to have feelings for me only to report back to the other village youths everything that I had confessed to him. He'd been playing a game with my heart the whole time. I went back to the fairy kingdom in tears. I was hoping for some kind of sympathy from them, some sort of compassion, but instead the other fairies just laughed at me. They were happy to see something topple me from the pedestal that I never even asked to be placed on. You see, I had broken an unwritten rule. Apparently the person of privilege is never allowed to complain about anything. With no one to confide in and no shoulder to cry on, I ran into the forest and collapsed into the roots of a tree. I lay there for hours crying my heart out into its bark. That tree was the only thing that ever comforted me from my pain, and I visited that tree quite a bit over the years. Over time, I tried forgiving the baker, but it only angered me more. I returned to his bakery and I demanded an apology, but he refused, saying the whole thing had just been a childish prank. So I cast a spell on a gingerbread man that he was baking. It jumped up from the tray and it ran away from him. It became quite the ordeal. The entire village chased after it, with really no success. The baker and his family became the laughingstock of the village, and they lost their bakery. It made me feel so much better, though. That's when I learned that taking the high road would never give me the same satisfaction as getting even. The enchantress set aside the baker's jar and moved on to the next one. A man was holding a hammer inside with a chain draped over his shoulder. He appeared in the jar. The locksmith was a troubled man, Esmea said, and she shook her head. A testament to his profession, he liked to keep his properties locked down, and I was no exception. I fell for him mostly out of convenience, needing something to do and to repair my heart from the damage left by the baker. He was such a quiet man, he barely said a word to me. He never looked me in the eye, and when he touched me it was rarely out of affection. He definitely left his mark on me. Several marks, actually. And like a fool, I stayed, thinking it might be the only type of love that I would ever receive. And when I finally told him I was leaving, he didn't even blink. He had so many demons already that I didn't feel the need to cause him more distress when we parted. I felt more anger toward myself than I did toward him for letting him harm me. I kept him as a reminder to never let myself sink to such pitiful depths again. Good morning, Ray. Charlotte and Rumpelstiltskin looked sideways at each other. They couldn't believe that the enchantress was telling them so much, but Esmea had completely lost herself in that stroll down the most painful memories of her past. The trip down memory lane wasn't entirely for them, however. Telling her captives the stories of her former lovers appeared to gradually rejuvenate her from her long night. She stood taller, and her hair flowed more vigorously above her. The purple flames in Esmea's fireplace grew more the more she reminisced. It was undeniable. The enchantress was fueled by the pain of her past. Esmea picked up the third jar in the center of the mantle, and a man began playing a pipe, and he appeared in the cloudy substance. The musician was the lover I thought I had been waiting for, Esmea confessed. I was so taken by his charm, his constant serenading me with his songs and his sonnets. He was so eager to confess our love to the world, well, too eager, really. I realized that it wasn't me he was in love with, but the idea of me. He wanted the world to know that he was connected to the future fairy godmother, not Esmea. He was using me like a ladder. However, I stayed with him despite knowing his true intentions, dreading the thought of being alone again. So I showered him with gifts, in particular, an infamous pipe that he used to magically clear a town of rats. I enchanted the pipe myself. I had hoped that it would equalize our statuses. I thought if I gave him something that made him feel as important as me, he would learn to love me and not my title. Sadly, the only thing that grew from his victory was his ego, and it led him to infidelity as easily as he had led the rats to the river. I transformed his new lover into an instrument so that he could forever play her the same way that he played me. The enchantress picked up the fourth jar on the mantle, and she stared inside at the soul of a man dressed head to toe in armor. The soldier was a very guarded man, Esmea said. He kept our relationship a total secret. It was refreshing to be with someone so private after that musician. Later, I discovered his discretion was not to protect me, but to protect himself. The soldier was ashamed of our relationship. He thought if word broke out that he was courting a fairy, it would damage his career and he would never be promoted to general. I cast a spell on him that flattened his feet and stiffened his joints. He spent the rest of his days guarding the entrance to a kitchen and never received any promotion at all. The enchantress moved on to the final jar on the mantel. A handsome young man wearing robes and a crown appeared inside of it. Esmea looked at him differently than she had looked at all the others. It was clear that this was the hardest memory for her to relive. "The king hurt me more than anyone," the enchantress confessed. "Unlike the others, the king treated me with compassion. All the rest failed to. He was my best friend and the only person who I ever felt loved me back. Perhaps that common kinship is what made me fall for him more than the others, and it's why it still hurts to this day. However, he never loved me as much as I loved him. Friendship was the only thing he ever wanted from me. I visited him every day, hoping that he would change his mind. One day he caught me trying to give him a love potion. I'd never seen him so angry. He shouted for the entire castle to hear that he would never love me the same way I loved him, even with all the love potions in the world." I lost my temper. I cursed the king to live as a hideous beast. I turned him into a monster that I thought he was. Eventually he found a girl to love him despite his animalistic features, and my curse was broken. The story of Beauty and the Beast has been exaggerated over time. The king never told a soul that I was the one who cursed him. He was still a friend after all the things that I had done to him. The king's rejection was the final break that my heart could take. I thought if the king was incapable of loving me, then no one ever could. The fairy godmother says that I changed over that period of time, and well, she's right. I represented happily ever after, but I couldn't find happily ever after for myself. Everywhere I went, I was expected to solve problems, but I couldn't salvage my own. I began hating the world that I stood for. I hated the fairies. I hated the pathetic people that they helped, and I hated myself for being one of them. I stopped pretending that I belonged among them, and for the first time I began to say and do what I wanted, rather than what I was expected to do. If the other fairies were going to condemn me regardless of what I did, well, then I might give them a valid reason to. When they replaced me on the Happily Ever After assembly, they gave my seat to Emeralda, and I can't say I was surprised. I was furious and hurt, but I knew that the fairies had secretly been waiting for an excuse to take something away from me. Emeralda had never been as gifted as me, but she'd always been so loved by everyone that she met. The fairies knew appointing her would hurt me the most. So I ran into the forest and I found my trustworthy tree to cry into. I stayed and I cried for days and days, and I felt as if my soul had finally been crushed, as if my entire life had been a cruel experiment to see how much heartbreak I could withstand. When I finally dried my tears and looked up at the tree, it was significantly taller than all the other trees in the forest. After all the tears I'd shed over the years into its roots, the tree had surpassed the others surrounding it. I was so ashamed of myself I couldn't believe what I had let the world do to me. I cast a spell on the tree, causing it to curve and loop like a vine, until it was the same height as all the other trees, evidence that my heartache was now gone. That's the moment that the fragile, heartbroken fairy inside of me died, and the enchantress was born. I decided from then on if the world was going to speak my name, it would be whispered in fear, rather than mocked with envy. If the world was going to take all the joy from me, I would simply take all the joy from the world. Esme had almost forgotten she wasn't alone. All the pain from her past was what had created the person she was today, so it was difficult for her to realign herself with the present. "Everyone goes through heartache," Charlotte said. I've been through my own share of loss, but I got over it. I never plotted ruthless revenging schemes or held the world responsible for what happened to me." Esmea jerked her head toward her. "Really?" she said angrily. "Have you ever felt loneliness so strong that it hollowed your soul with every heartbeat? Have you ever hated the sun for rising and forcing another day of solitude upon you?" "I suppose not," Charlotte said. "No one ever had trouble loving me." Rumpelstiltskin gasped at Charlotte's bold statement. Esmea was almost impressed by Charlotte's fearlessness. "Careful," Esmea warned her. "There's a thin line between bravery and stupidity." Charlotte turned away, unable to look at her anymore, and Esmea placed the jar containing the king's soul back on the mantel. "I should retire for the night," she said. "I know I make it look effortless, but world domination really is exhausting. I'm going to rest for a bit before continuing my attacks across the kingdoms. I want to be at my best when I cause the world its worst. And Esmea headed toward her chamber for the night, but Rumpelstiltskin stopped her before she left the room. Esmea? Rumpelstiltskin asked, carefully filtering any judgment from his tone. Are you sure you'll ever find peace, even after taking over the world? Are you certain you'll be satisfied? Charlotte turned back, interested to hear the answer. A malevolent smile appeared on the enchantress's face. Silly Rumpy, Esmea said with a laugh. Who said I only wanted this world? Dun dun. She will never be satisfied. Sorry, I had to. There's a Hamilton lyric for everything, you guys. And apparently that was this one. All right. The next chapter is the Wand of Wonderment. The Wand of Wonderment. The carriage ride back into the Red Riding Hood Kingdom was a difficult trip to make. Witnessing the enchantress take their grandmother's soul was the most devastating thing the twins had ever seen. Is it just me, or is the enchantress giving Ursula a little bit? She's like kind of like the way that we know like Ursula in The Little Mermaid mixed with Maleficent, you know. She's definitely giving that. Yeah. Not like the sea witch in the real Little Mermaid, but like the Disney one. Yeah. Alex cried into her brother's shoulder for most of the trip back to Red's castle. She has Mom, she has Grandma, and soon she's gonna have the whole fairy tale world, Alex sobbed. She's taking everything from us. Not everything, Alex, Connor said. His was the only reassuring voice in the carriage. We have each other, and we're gonna figure out a way to get them back. Although they appreciated his optimism, Froggy and Red couldn't help but have their doubts. The world had been counting on the fairy godmother for a solution, and now that she was gone, nothing seemed powerful enough to stand against the enchantress. I'm not sure we can fight this one, Connor, Alex said with tears spilling out of her eyes like a leaky faucet. For the first time, I think the bad guy might win in the story. The despair grew inside the carriage with every mile it traveled. The twins, Froggy and Red, racked their brains for a solution, but honestly, they couldn't come up with anything. After a day and a half of traveling and worrying, they were very eager to reach Red's castle. That's funny, Red said, looking out the window. I would expect that we would be past the wall by now. Froggy and the twins looked out the window too. They were surprised that there was no sign of the wall in the distance. It did seem to be taking longer than usual to get to the Red Riding Hood Kingdom. Wait a minute, Connor said and squinted at something in the distance. Does that say what I think it says? The others looked out the window at what he was referring to, and the carriage slowly passed by a sign that made their stomachs turn. Bo Peep Family Farms. How is that possible? Red said, and her eyes grew twice in size. The Bo Peep Family Farms are inside my kingdom. Where's the wall? Froggy and the twins stared out at the rural hills surrounding them, wondering the same thing. A few moments later, they discovered a group of Red Riding Hood soldiers standing on the side of the road. They scratched their heads and looked around in bewilderment, just as confused as they were. Froggy opened the door and he poked his head out of the carriage as he passed them. Excuse me, good sirs, what's going on here? Where's the wall? There is no wall, sir, the soldier said in disbelief. What do you mean there's no wall? Froggy asked. I mean, there's no wall anymore, sir, the soldier said. The whole thing disappeared earlier this morning. What? Red gasped. We were guarding the southern entrance when a bright flash came out of nowhere, another soldier explained. The next thing we knew, the whole wall was gone. Alex and Connor turned to each other thinking the same thing. The enchantress, Alex said. She's started her attacks. Red placed a hand over her chest, trying to calm her uncontrollably beating heart. Even after hearing the enchantress's warnings firsthand, she never thought her home would be targeted. Were there any casualties? Froggy asked the soldiers. No, sir, one replied. Just a whole lot of confusion. Froggy shut the carriage and the door sank and shut the carriage door and sank in his seat across from the twins. So it begins, he said to himself sadly. It was dusk by the time the carriage approached Red's castle. They felt so exposed without the wall, and as they looked around the town, it was apparent that the villagers felt the same way. Everywhere they looked, wooden boards were nailed over the doors and windows of the homes and shops as if the residents were preparing for a storm. I haven't seen people this frightened since the big bad wolf was around, Red said. It reminds me of the day before CRAWL's revolution. Froggy took Red's hand in hers. Her mind was too preoccupied to notice its cold, slimy texture. Esmea could have done much worse, Froggy said. Thankfully, all she did was take the wall. His words had the opposite effect of what he had intended, and Red pulled her hand from his and her eyes became watery. It's not just a wall, Red yelled. That's what separated us from the rest of the world. It represents our safety and our victory through years of struggles. The big bad wolf and his succeeding pack might be gone, but what the wall did was bring a symbol of peace to my people. Red wiped away the tears that had escaped, embarrassed by her outburst. As soon as we get back to my castle, I'm going to order a line of soldiers around the town at once, Red said, nodding to herself. We may not have a wall, but we will be protected. Froggy and the twins nodded along with her. The twins liked seeing Red give official orders and be selfless as a queen. Maybe Froggy had been right about her. Maybe there was more to Red than they had ever considered. They eventually reached the castle, and as soon as Red gave her orders to the soldiers, 4 of them headed into the library for a much-needed, quiet, recuperating evening. But as they walked in, they were shocked to discover a surprise visitor was awaiting their arrival. Jack? Red yelled. The infamous Jack of the Beanstalk fame was nonchalantly sitting on one of the armchairs. He was tall and handsome with broad shoulders, exactly how the twins remembered him. He wore suspenders, and his trusty axe was hanging from his belt. Hey, Red, Jack said, and he stood up to greet the group. Red went pale and stiff as a statue. Well, what are you doing here? She managed. Visiting, obviously, Jack said with a smile, and the young queen could only make a couple of high-pitched squeals as she attempted to form another question. Froggy's eyes went back and forth between Red and Jack. He couldn't decide if this surprise was good or bad. Well, this is unexpected, Froggy said, and he chose to smile. Jack's face lit up when he saw the twins. I remember you two. Hi, Jack, Alex said. Hey, man, Connor said. And despite everything else on their minds, the twins were glad to see him. Red grew anxious quickly, and she began looking around the library. Wait, Jack, if you're here, then that must mean slam. The library door shut with gusto, and they all turned to see Goldilocks standing behind them. You, Red pointed at her, and she quickly backed away from her old nemesis. Hey, Red, Goldilocks said with a fake smile. She wore tall leather boots and long maroon knitted sweater. A silver sword hung from her side. She had golden curls, and she was just as beautiful as the last time the twins had seen her. There was something different about Goldilocks and Jack that the twins noticed. They both looked much happier now that they were on the run together. Goldilocks, Alex said, and she and her brother ran to give Goldilocks a hug. Oh, what a wonderful surprise, Goldilocks said, and a proud smirk appeared on her face. I would say it's nice to see you again, children, but you're hardly children anymore. Connor nodded. Thank you, he said. That's what we've been trying to tell everybody. Goldilocks playfully rubbed his head. I've had at least 4 warrants for my arrest by the time I was your age, she said, and then she winked at Jack. Jack smiled at her. I'm a late-blooming bandit myself, but I'm catching up, he said, and he winked back at them. They lovingly stared into each other's eyes as if there were no one else in the room. Wait, am I frozen? Is it Nikki or is it me? It might be you, Nikki. Do you want to swipe out and back in? Okay, sorry about that, guys. You, Red said, pointing at Goldilocks. She looked like a teapot whose spout had just been corked. Oh, relax, Red, Goldilocks said. We aren't here to cause you any trouble. I'm not going to harm you. You don't have to be sorry, Nikki. No worries. Red snorted. You bet your porridge-loving indigestion... I read that really wrong, but that's funnier. Indigestion from porridge is funny, but that's not what it says. You bet your porridge-loving indecisive behind you won't be harming me. This is my castle, she said, and you're both wanted fugitives. How did you get inside my castle? We used the front door, Jack said blankly. They let us in without any trouble. I grew up with most of the guards, remember? Red looked back and forth between Jack and Goldilocks, not wanting to believe that this statement was true. It was frustrating to feel so disrespected in her own home. Does the word queen not mean anything to anyone? Red shouted. Shouldn't my safety be a priority in my castle? Froggy decided to break the tension. Forgive us, we really weren't expecting company. We've had a rough couple of days, he explained, still a little on edge himself. Why don't we all have a seat and catch up? No one argued this. Everyone took a seat around the big bad wolf floor rug. It took a minute for Red to gather her thoughts and join them. She sat next to Froggy but left a noticeable space between them. Jack and Goldilocks sat across from them, sitting so close to each other that they looked joined at the hip. Alex and Connor shared an armchair adjacent to the couples. You just returned from the happily ever after assembly meeting, I take it? Goldilocks asked. Yeah, indeed, Red said with her nose raised slightly, because that's what law-abiding rulers do. We meet publicly and we discuss things that are for the benefit of the greater good. Her words didn't affect Goldilocks in the slightest. Oh, where's the fun in that? Goldilocks said, happy to get under Red's skin. How did it go? Jack asked. Honestly, it was awful, Connor said. The enchantress showed up, kidnapped our grandmother, and she already has our mom. Jack and Goldilocks looked at each other with the same inquisitive expression. What does she want with your mom and grandmother? Goldilocks asked the twins, and Alex and Connor had forgotten that Jack and Goldilocks made a run for it long before they discovered who their grandmother was. Well, our grandmother is the fairy godmother, Alex said with a shrug. Surprise! Jack and Goldilocks looked rather impressed. Huh, well, how about that? Jack said. And the twins told them all about how they were from another world and their grandmother had traveled back and forth for centuries, sharing stories of the fairy tale world with theirs. Once Jack and Goldilocks processed this information, the twins continued to tell them how their father used the wishing spell to be reunited with their mother in the other world, and how they had discovered the fairy tale world by traveling through their grandmother's old storybook. Yes, it's all very touching, Red said, waving her hands. They learned the fairy godmother was their grandmother, and then the three of them all disappeared through the door that led to the different world. Blah, blah, blah. You still haven't told me what you two are doing in my castle. The twins could tell that Jack and Goldilocks were interested in hearing more of their story, but they knew they'd better appease Red before her head exploded. We just wanted to see if any progress had been made with the enchantress, Jack said. Nope, there hasn't. Sorry, you can both leave now, Red replied quickly, and Froggy placed his hand on her knee. Darling, let's not be rude, Froggy said. They might be emotionally distressing, wanted fugitives, but they really are still our guests. The twins were eager to tell Jack and Goldilocks about the meeting from the previous night, but they didn't wait for Froggy or Red to get to it. They told them all about Princess Hope being kidnapped and how the enchantress had taken their grandmother and was starting to attack the kingdoms. And there's nothing that can be done to stop her? Jack said, shaking his head in disbelief that the twins had been feeling for days. Unfortunately not, Froggy said. I don't know how the situation even concerns the two of you, Red said and crossed her arms. Hey, this affects us too, Goldilocks said. We don't want to live in a world ruled by her either. We just thought we could help. Help? Red said and laughed at the idea. Yeah, and what are you going to do to help Goldilocks? Steal her jewels? Pick her locks? Test all of her furniture to see if it's just right? Goldilocks stood and glared down at Red. It made the queen squirm in her seat, and she looked to the others for help. But she was on her own. Is there something you want to say to my face, Grandma's girl? Goldilocks asked. No, I'd much rather say it behind your back, Red said. I thought after helping me escape you had changed, Goldilocks said, but apparently I was wrong. Well, I thought that helping you would make me feel better, but I suppose that I was wrong too, Red admitted and sheepishly glanced over at Jack. Froggy raised his green index finger. Moving back to more important matters, he said. The fairies and the monarchs don't have any clue what to do. The fairy godmother's always been able to just wave her wand and make things better, but unfortunately this time she cannot. So now we're all waiting for a solution to arise, if there is one. The twins nodded. Goldilocks sat back down next to Jack and held his hand. The room was reunited with the hopelessness that they had tried leaving in the carriage. Suddenly, Connor cocked his head. Like a puppy. Wait, Froggy, what did you just say? He asked, pointing at his amphibious friend. I said nobody knows what to do, Froggy said, not sure how he could have made it any clearer. No. Before that part, Connor said. What did you say about the fairy godmother? Froggy looked at him peculiarly, wondering what he wanted this horrible news to be repeated for. Well, I said the fairy godmother usually just waves her wand and makes everything better, he said. Bingo, Connor said, and immediately jumped out of the armchair and ran toward the bookshelves. Connor, what's gotten into you? Alex asked. Hey, Froggy, Connor asked completely in his own world. Where's the book we were looking at the other day, the one that had the chapter about the wishing spell in it? It took a moment for Froggy to remember. Myths, legends, and collecting spells, he asked. Yes, it should be on shelf 2 over, 1 below the books from your sister. I'm very specific about where my books are kept. Connor scanned the shelves until he found it. Gotcha, he said with a satisfied jump. He sat back next to his sister and flipped through the pages. I think the answer that we're looking for is in this book. Are you talking about using the wishing spell again? Froggy asked. Can we use it on the enchantress? Jack asked. Trust me, wishing someone away never works, Red said, and raised an eyebrow in Goldilocks' direction. Goldilocks placed a hand on her sword as a warning. We couldn't use the wishing spell even if we wanted to, Alex said. The spell can only be used twice, and the evil queen was the second person to use it. No, I'm not talking about the wishing spell, Connor said, his eyes still glued to the pages he was searching. I'm thinking about something bigger and better. Here, look, I found it. And Connor turned the book around to the section he was referring to. The Wand of Wonderment. The room read it aloud together then. Connor nodded enthusiastically, expecting them all to share in his excitement, but unfortunately everyone else just exchanged pitying looks with one another. Why are you all looking at me like I wanted to take my pet rock for a walk? Connor asked. This book says whoever holds the Wand of Wonderment is invisible. Whoever gets their hands on it could potentially stop the enchantress. Froggy looked at him regretfully. Connor, that isn't real, Froggy said. It's just a childish legend, just like all the other subjects in that book. Okay, says the giant talking frog, Connor said with an eye roll. This book talks about the wishing spell too, and we proved that that wasn't just a myth. I bet most of the stuff in this book is real. The Wand of Wonderment, he read aloud from the book. Many believe that possessing the Wand of Wonderment gives the beholder the gift of invincibility. It says that the wand was formed from combining 6 of the most prized possessions of the 6 most hated people in the world. And although the idea is dubious, the legend of the wand might have some truth to it, considering the materials needed are most likely of a magical background. Unlike most collections, the materials required for the Wand of Wonderment change with the times. Connor took a breath and looked up at all the others who still looked ambivalent. Oh, come on, Connor said to the stubborn group. You gotta admit, it doesn't seem like too far of a stretch. Thank you, Isabella, that's very sweet. Everyone was on the fence about it, and Connor was frustrated that they weren't as convinced as he was. Look, my sister and I are from another dimension, he said, and then he pointed at Froggy. This guy's been magically transformed into an amphibian twice. What part about the Wand of Wonderment is hard for you people to believe? Connor made a valid point. What about the wand was so hard for them to believe after all the other things they'd witnessed? At least it was an option, and it was an option that gave them some hope. So Alex silently stared down at the book with a growing eagerness in her eyes. Okay, just for curiosity's sake, Alex said, who are the 6 most hated people in this world? And Red looked up at Goldilocks and opened her mouth to answer. By the world, Red, they don't mean by you, Alex clarified, and Red went silent. Well, I would say the Evil Queen is a candidate, Froggy said, and the others nodded in agreement. The giant, Jack said, and I'm not speaking from personal experience, people were terrified of him before. The Snow Queen, Goldilocks mentioned. Her historic reign over the Northern Kingdom still sends shivers down people's spine. Connor was all ears, making mental notes of all their suggestions. Okay, who else? I really never personally cared for Miss Muffet, Red said as she was confessing a horrid secret. I mean, it was just a spider. Why couldn't she get over it? Everyone in the room stared at Red for a moment, and then they went on with their brainstorming. What about the sea witch who traded with the Little Mermaid? Alex said. I was really scared of her as a kid. Oh, yeah. I bet all the fish in the sea are afraid of her, Connor said. And Froggy sat straight up in the seat as another idea came to him. Cinderella's wicked stepmother, he said. The whole charming kingdom despises her. This is great, Connor said. So far we have the Evil Queen, the Giant, the Snow Queen, the Sea Witch, and the Wicked Stepmother. Okay, we just need one more. They all went silent as their eyes wandered around the room. Well, isn't it obvious? Red said. It's the Enchantress. Lumps grew in everyone's throat because Red was right. Okay, well, the Wand of Wonderment was a good idea, Goldilocks said as if it were no longer a possibility, and everyone slumped in their seat, but Connor couldn't accept defeat. What is wrong with you guys? He said. We can't let confronting Esmea get in the way. This might be our only chance to stop her. He desperately looked at everyone in the room, hoping that someone would agree with him, but no one said anything. Connor leapt to his feet, deciding that actions would have to speak louder than words if he wanted to get through to them. So he walked across the room, collecting random books off the shelves. What are you doing? Alex asked him, and he didn't respond. He took a portrait of Red off the wall and added a couple of candlesticks to his pile. He walked to the fireplace and promptly dumped everything into the fire. Connor, Alex said. Those are mine, Red said. Have you gone mad? Froggy asked him, and Connor stood in front of the fireplace with his hands on his hips. The fire slowly consumed the pile of stuff behind him. You're not going to need it anymore, Connor said. Don't you get it? If we just sit around and wait, the Enchantress is going to take over. Everything we love will be gone. Alex wanted to share her brother's passion, but she couldn't get her head past the odds. Connor, honestly, it's just too dangerous. It's practically a death wish, she said. Her lack of faith was about to make Connor jump out of his skin. Doing nothing is the death wish, he said. If building this wand of wonderment thing offers us a chance at saving the world, then we would be idiots not to try it. Connor was practically in tears trying to convince them. Everyone looked back and forth between him and the objects burning in the fireplace. A decision had to be made, however. One thing was certain. Whatever they did risk losing it all. Froggy stood abruptly. Well, I agree with Connor, he said, and he held his head high. We know the outcome of doing nothing, so I'd rather die fighting. Froggy's words did have a rallying effect. I've never been good at just sitting around, Goldilocks said, standing with Froggy. Besides, you're going to need someone who's good with the sword out there. And then Jack stood next to Goldilocks. Hey, if the Enchantress thinks she's going to take over without a fight, then she's mistaken, he said. And their determination made Alex's heart skip a beat. This is a really big decision to make, she told them. Once we make it, there's no looking back. Like, we can't give up if the stakes become too high. We won't be able to do it unless we agree on that. No matter what, we cannot give up. Froggy looked to Jack. Jack looked to Goldilocks, and Goldilocks looked to Connor. The same confident smile appeared on all their faces. Hey, I'm up for the challenge, Connor said, looking to his sister, and Alex nodded and stood too. All right, then count me in, she said, and she smiled. Me too, Red exclaimed. She was the last one to stand. I have no additional points to make, but I support the venture completely. No one takes my wall away from me and gets away from it. Gets away with it. Sorry. Connor went to a desk in the corner of the library and quickly retrieved a piece of parchment and a quill. Let's just make a list of things that we need to make the Wand of Wonderment, he said. We've narrowed it down to the 6 most hated people in the world. Now, what are those people's most prized possessions? Everyone sat down and began planning out the expedition. Well, everyone knows that the Snow Queen's scepter is her most prized possession, Goldilocks said. That's where her magic comes from. All right, Snow Queen, magic scepter, Connor said and wrote the information down. I imagine that the wicked stepmother's most valuable possession has something to do with her family. Maybe an heirloom for her atrocious daughters, perhaps? Froggy proposed. She won't be hard to find. She still lives in the same home Queen Cinderella grew up in. Wicked stepmother, family heirloom, Connor said and made a note of it. The giant's favorite item shouldn't be difficult to figure out either, Jack said. There weren't many things in his castle when I traveled there as a boy. It's difficult finding materials for things his size. Giant, TBD, Connor said. The evil queen's thing would, have to be her magic mirror, Red suggested. Think about all that she went through to free that creepy bald man from it. Evil queen, magic mirror, Connor said. And just when I thought our evil queen days were behind us. Anyway, it's in pieces at the bottom of the castle ruins, but I guess they probably shouldn't be too hard to retrieve, Alex said, trying to comfort him. And what about the sea witch? Red asked. What could she not live without? Her jewels, Goldilocks said without hesitation. It's what she collects in exchange for favors, unless she bargains for something greater. Sea witch loves her bling. Okay, Connor said, and he scribbled it down. All we have left is the Enchantress, Alex said, and the room unanimously took a deep breath. What is Esmia's most prized possession? Everyone drew a blank. They all knew the Enchantress loved power, but how would that manifest as an object? Yeah, we're gonna have to come back to it. I'll put a question mark by her name for now, Connor said, and Goldilocks looked over his shoulder at the list that they had compiled. These people live far and wide across the kingdoms, she said. How are we gonna get around? And Jack looked over the list too, not to mention a group of travelers would look awfully suspicious at a time like this, he said. Yeah, and we'll need to travel fast too, Alex said. The Enchantress herself is growing impatient. The room then filled with a low humming sound as Froggy thought on it. We're going to need something to travel in quickly and discreetly across the land, he said, rubbing his chin. Let me propose that we forget about traveling on land and, perhaps we suggest traveling above it. Froggy hopped to the other side of the library and returned with a book. Alex recognized the title and instantly knew what Froggy was getting at. We travel by balloon, Froggy said excitedly, just like the travelers did in Around the World in 80 Days. I have to admit, I've been waiting for a situation to arise that offered an excuse to build something like what I read about in this book. Froggy, that's really ambitious, Alex said. Yeah, but it might work, Connor said. The Enchantress isn't going to expect people in the sky. This world is centuries away from aviation. Precisely, Froggy said and flipped through the book. He quickly grabbed the quill out of Connor's hand and began sketching something on the back of their list. Now, in the story, there are 3 travelers, so all they needed was a large basket to travel in, but I propose we go further. We need something to glide across the sky and sail across the sea. So, let's build a ship. Oh my gosh, you're right. Did I have a premonition about the balloon? Did I pre-dream this chapter? Well, damn. Well, damn. Froggy finished his drawing and showed it to the room. His proposal was a modest boat-shaped vessel with sails on the sides of a large balloon above it. I forgot until you said it, Nikki. Can we build something this extravagant in time? Goldilocks asked, and Jack took the sketch and examined it himself. He was rubbing the sides of his head. It's not the construction I'm worried about. It's the amount of supplies we would really need to build it, he said, and the twins remembered he was a very talented carpenter, so they took his words to heart. Red took a closer look at the drawing. Well, exactly what kind of supplies are we going to need? She asked with a raised eyebrow, and Froggy looked down at the drawing. Lumber, very sturdy fabric, and a lot of lamp oil, he said, and Red squinted, quietly nodding, counting off all those things in her head. Yeah, I have all those things here in the castle, she said with a big smile, and everyone did a double take. Where? Connor asked. We can weave the ship out of all the wood from my basket collection, Red said. I think my collection of summer dresses should provide enough fabric for the balloons and the sails, and they were made with the finest fabric in the kingdom anyway. As for the lamp oil, they keep barrels and barrels of it in the castle just to keep the water warm for my baths, and honestly, I take a lot of baths. Didn't you lose all your baskets in the fire? Alex asked. Yeah, most of them, Red said, but I've had plenty of birthdays and holidays since then. My collection is practically complete again. The twins couldn't argue. If the dress Red had worn to the Happily Ever After assembly meeting was any indication, the Queen definitely had enough supplies to go around. Honestly, I think it might work, Jack said. I can have some of the better plans drawn up by tomorrow morning. Red, can you send the best builders in the kingdom? We need as many as we can get. Yeah, absolutely, Red said. The third little pig happens to be one of the best builders in the kingdom, and he actually owes me a favor because he accidentally built part of his brick house on Bo Peep property, and I pardoned him for it. How long is this going to take to build? Goldilocks asked Jack. I don't know, 4 or 5 days if we work diligently, Jack said. 3 days if we work around the clock. Terrific, Froggy said. That was a really great idea, Froggy, Connor said. Froggy smiled. Yes, I think so too, he said. It would make traveling a lot easier, not having to trek through the northern mountains to the Snow Queen or up the beanstalk to the giant's castle. Jack cleared his throat. Unfortunately, we still need to climb the beanstalk, he said. Why? Alex asked. Well, the beanstalk is what summons the giant's castle, Jack said. It won't appear unless the beanstalk grows to a certain height. Connor scrunched his forehead. Where is the beanstalk anyway? I don't think we've seen it since we've been here, he asked. And Red went silent and stared at the floor. Red, did you do something with Jack's beanstalk? Goldilocks asked, noticing her not-so-subtle bashfulness. And Red looked around the room with guilty eyes. I may have had it removed. Removed? Jack yelled. Why would you do that? Because it was an eyesore, Red said defensively. Besides, it was hardly worth waking up every day and staring that thing down, after like all of this. She gestured to herself and then Jack and Goldilocks. Great, Goldilocks said. Now what are we going to do? Jack sighed. I'm gonna have to find the traveling tradesman again. Hopefully he'll have more beans, know where to get them or something. I'll leave as soon as the builders get set up tomorrow. Then that settles it, Froggy said with a clap. The 5 of us will leave as soon as the ship is ready. Red looked at him sideways. What do you mean 5 of you? She asked, and Goldilocks' mouth fell open. Don't tell me you're planning on coming, she said. Of course I'm coming, Red said. I'm supplying everything for this trip, aren't I? Hey, with all due respect, Red, this trip might not be suitable for a queen. Excuse me, Red said, horribly offended. If memory serves me right, the last time we were all together, I have been kidnapped twice, thrown into a pit of demonic plants, and almost mauled to death in the same day. Are you telling me that my life can only be danger when it's convenient for you? Red crossed her arms even tighter and looked away from the others. There was no changing her mind. Darling, Froggy asked, do you really think that's the best idea, given the history of everyone we're traveling with? I'm coming, Red declared. I'm not sitting around here letting the 5 of you take credit for saving the world. I should start packing immediately. Honestly, I've never packed for an adventure like this. Red giddily got to her feet and ran out of the library, and the others shot Froggy a dirty look. I'm going to talk to her and explain the situation in a bit, he said, and he followed the young, excited queen out of the room. Jack went to the desk and began outlining better plans for the ship. Goldilocks stayed with the twins by the fire. A proud smile came to her face as she looked at them. What is it? Alex asked. Oh, nothing, Goldilocks said with a shrug. I just recall a time when I told the two of you to be brave, and now look who's doing the convincing to me. Alex and Connor exchanged a smile. They'd grown a lot since their last trip. I should feed Porridge, Goldilocks said. I had to put her in the castle stables, and she's never really gotten along well with the other horses. Goldilocks left the library, gently tapping the twins on their shoulders on her way out. It grew very quiet in the library, except for the flames flickering in the fireplace and the strokes of Jack's quill as he worked on the ship's design. You almost lost me there, Alex told her brother. I felt so defeated. Thanks for pulling me back from it. Anytime, Connor said. Thanks for helping me cheat on my tests in 6th grade, though. Alex let out a noise that was a half gasp and half laugh. How did you know about that? She asked. Connor looked at her. The only C or B that belonged on my tests were my initials, he said, and Alex laughed for the first time in 2 days. She'd missed times when passing tests were their biggest concern. Are you sure that we're up for this? She asked him. Connor thought about it. You mean the dangerous adventure through the fairy tale world, collecting various items with potential life or death risks at stake? He asked with a sly grin, and Alex snickered. Yeah, that's what I was referring to. Connor thought about it for a moment, and then he nodded to himself. Yeah, bring it on. Very cute. Oh, we're off on an adventure. Off on an adventure. And just in time, somebody just woke up. Hi, baby angel. Hello. Good morning, sweet angel. You slept so well. That was a really good sleep. You must feel really good. I bet your brain feels fantastic. All right, well, that was a fantastic chapter, if I do say so myself. And I can't wait to see what tomorrow brings. To everyone who does fantasy football, I hope you do okay tonight. Good luck to everyone whose QBs are injured. I know, isn't that crazy, Stephanie? All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys. Oh, there's a poll up on Patreon about Roll for Slime Disney Night, so go do the poll if you can. Okay.